Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to break down typography in the simplest, clearest way possible. And by the end of this video, you will be able to create a clean, modern, mobile typography system that actually works in real UI and products. On screen, I am showing you my Figma file so you can visually follow along. So let's get into it. Typography isn't actually just choosing a font, it's the entire system behind how your text behaves in your product. The sizes, the spacing, the hierarchy, and how readable everything feels. So here on screen, I have an example that I created. This a typography system that I created for mobile apps and mobile UI. So to keep it simple, I will explain you three different terms. And what is the difference between text styles and typography system? The type scale is basically the math behind your sizes, whereas text styles are the name presets you use in your UI and products. And typography is the complete text system that ties your product together. So basically the whole system that you created using these two steps. So let's learn the actual practical use case of all these three. So look at the big design systems that are industry standards and I consider as benchmark in terms of designing a product. So the first one, as you can see, is Base by Uber. So Base is the design system by Uber. The second one is an Untitled UI kit. The third one is from Wise. The fourth one is from Apple. Everyone knows Apple and how really awesome and clean the Apple design is. So to start with, before building anything or before even I built my own systems, I studied the systems behind this, that basically the typography behind the systems that you can see on this screen. These are all publicly available, so you can grab this from Figma community or either from their official page. I would like to drop some tips here on what is common in between this top tier design system. If you can have a closer look here, they all actually follow a fixed type scaling that they are using to create this type text style. Build a typography system, you always start from a base size. Base size is the standard size or the baseline reference that you will create the larger and smaller sizes from. All the systems use 16 as base size because this is the most common and sweet spot for font sizes in terms of readability and also how a body text should be. So there are various type scales which are actually just these ratios that you will follow. The most well known in designing is golden ratio 1.61, but this is not the best one for in case of our typography systems for UI or basically the user interface. So these are the most used type scales in terms of UI. So the -2 is not really used in UI because it is too tight. So because you need some sort of hierarchy between the sizes of the different textiles. Second is mainly used by Google Material UI or Material Design System. -3 is kind of Apple-ish, but many other design system also uses it. Apple also mentions it in human interface guidelines that they also adjust it by themselves based on their own judgment. So they don't follow a fixed rule, but one minor third is the closest to Apple. Major third is being used by Uber and Untitled UI. And golden ratio is mainly used in branding and editorial stuff, not specifically UI. So let's see how we can come up with our own type scale. And for this tutorial, we will use the major third, which is 1.25. Let's say this is our base size. Well, for this example, we will come up with 3 greater sizes and 2 smaller sizes. Then our base is our base size. Let's bold it right for now. Now for a step above the base size, we get 20. Now, just for the sake of simplicity, I will do base +1 to indicate that this is one step higher than the base size. 1 unit higher than the base size basically. Now, for base +2, we would multiply this base +1 into 1.25 to get base +2. We get 25 and we will call it base +2. Now to get the smaller value, now to get a smaller unit than this, we would do 12.8 divide by 1.25 and we get 10, and we will call it -2. I will explain you the naming convention in the next step, but we have two major steps to go with. Now, each major design system, everyone follows a grid. So 20 is also multiple for 4, but 25 isn't. So we will either do it by 24. We will either modify it to 24 or 26, whatever you feel is right. But the main idea you have to see is here. The difference between this and this shouldn't feel a lot distinct from each other, but at the same time it shouldn't feel very similar or very close to each other. So there should be a good balance between this step up sizes. Same goes for this. So we will never use decimal in your font sizes or either any aspect of your design system. So we will do it 12 and we will do it here 10. Mainly this 4 pixel or 8 pixel grid logic is everything should be either like 16 plus 2, 16 plus 4 or 16 plus 8. So the least you go in UI sizes is 10 at max. Basically we would keep it a even value that is divisible by 2, 4 or 8, 2, 4 or 8 basically. So 12 minus 2 would be 10. So the next our topic in this case is line height and tracking. So to explain you line height and why we use different line heights and for what purpose, I will show you system. After creating the whole system, your typography system would look like this. The main question that many of you would have is how many to create. Well, just to clarify a concept, the more number of text styles you have doesn't mean the better for your product. Actually, it's opposite. If you look at this big design system, so I am suggesting you about 4 groups. Now, what are these groups for? So, well, after you have this, if you remember this base plus 1, base minus 1, this was a very rough naming convention that I came up with just to explain you stuff. Depending on how many sizes you create, you distribute them into about 4 to 5 groups that you will use. Now, how you come up with this group and what size would fall into what group. So this thing you mainly come up with what is the purpose. So these are not random names. If you see display, title and body, and there are also specials and clickables. So you define purpose for each type of style, at least for this type of groups. So display would be mainly used for very bold titles of the screens where you need that hierarchy. Display would, in terms of word length, it would be really small. It won't be a like 3 line of text. Display is meant for a big bold heading, whereas title can be used for sections, for separating sections throughout your app for a long scrolling content, so you can use title for that. The most common is body, and specials are generally for status, toggle, whereas where you need small text but it is not as important as body but still holds its importance. And clickables are basically created by me for my own system, are basically the labels and text of actual interactive stuff like buttons, chips, or whatever is intended to be clicked. You would have about at least 10 number of text styles. So this is how you would divide them into each groups with a defined purpose. If you see, this is a guide that I created for my system. It explains what each group is for. Now, depending on this group they went into, you would define the line height and track, and also the spacing between them. Sorry, it's called letter spacing. So let's make it. Now I am giving them a name, so I will call it caption. Okay. Now, based on what category of folder they are falling into and what purpose they hold. As I told you, display is mainly used for big bold text and they are very expressive, and they are in most cases intended to be very short of length. Like I'm talking in terms of mobile UI, not landing pages, not web, not desktop. So this is specifically for mobile. So we would do it 32 because that's around how much display is generally. So for displays, they are meant to be a little more tighter and concise in the sense like they are more folded and more get together in a sense. So this is line height, this identifies the difference, the space between this, basically the vertical spacing between two lines of the text. This is for the horizontal spacing between the letters, so like this. So I generally recommend using percent for this, so it's easy to scale and it's easy to translate into code. So for displays, I generally go with about -2. In terms of displays, I go about 140, 130 or 135% to keep them a little more tight and get together. And for the letter spacing, I keep them around 2% or sometimes -1.5. So if you see, this is a little more tighter and put together compared to a title or other font. We can also try with -3. You have to experiment this with your own font to find the best output that you need. Displays are generally semi-bold, bold, extra bold too, but I prefer them semi-bold. So this is how you would keep a display. And now in terms of title, more like, so I generally tend to keep them 140 or about 140, and I like to keep them mid, and the letter spacing would be -1. So you have to keep them harmonious. The title and display should feel a little different but still hold that hierarchy. And this is base, which is most likely body, basically the regular text and the most common text you will use. So this has to be well enough, because this can be also used for paragraphs. So let me generate a paragraph to showcase properly. So this is the paragraph. Okay. So this is how paragraph looks, a bunch of text. So to keep it readable and easier on user's eyes, we generally keep it around 150%. You can go 145%. You need to experiment, but it's a sweet spot. So I generally go with 150, which basically makes it more readable. And you can just increase it by a third bit, not too much. I like to keep it 0%. But it depends on the font at the end of the day. For captions are generally smaller. You could keep them medium if you have intended purpose for it. And for the line height, you basically go with 140, because you don't want it to be too close or too tight, because the smaller the size, the harder it is to read from the user's perspective. You would increase by a little bit. And for label, which is the smallest one, you could keep it light, but I don't recommend it. But it also depends on font, and the size I follow is 140. But for this, for the letter spacing, I use it 2% or maybe 3%. Depends on how you use it and what is your font. So here's the secret sauce which can break or make your system. Now, one major step that left is testing this system. Even with all this calculation, if you're not able to utilize it properly, or it is not aligning with your product need, not of your use, so you have to actually test it and modify it based on your purpose and product. And please note, if you finalize a type scale, let's say you finalize a major second type scale, please be consistent with it, because it can make your system or typography system look very jarring and distinct like that. So this is an example UI that I created using my system that I talked about. That's it for this video. I hope you was able to explain all the important stuff very properly. And this is how you create a complete modern mobile typography system from scratch. If you want to study or use the exact system I built, it's available for free on the Figma community.